had the whole world at our feet, watching seasons change. Our roads were lined with adventure, mountains in the way couldn't keep us from the sea. Here we stand, open arms. This is home where we are, ever strong in the world that we made.
Okay, good evening everyone. It's actually a special evening because there will be no news today. There will also be no mission explanation. Instead, there will be a mission though, so if you like my challenges, the mission will happen after the livestream ends. And, in the usual place at the ending screen. That being said, I will do probably a mission, like a live stream about missions in 2 weeks, just a live stream about 5 missions that will not be covered during the next few evenings, because we have Honorary Bot joining us today and tomorrow and next week, both Wednesday and Thursday, to do a live stream about Windows kernel debugging, which is basically a topic which was requested quite a lot. So that's about it from me today. I will be on the chat and I will be on IRC. If you have any questions to Honorary Bot, just pass them to me and I will let him know. And I'm switching to Honorary Bot and I let him introduce himself, so have fun and good luck.
Thank you and good evening everyone. My name is Artem, Honorary Bot Shishkin. Yeah, but you may call me whatever you like. We're going to do a series of streams about Windows kernel debugging. As there will be 4 streams. Here's the plan for the 4 streams. Today we're going to talk about how to set the things up. And the next stream, which will be tomorrow, we're going to talk about the basic stuff. So if you're already familiar with WinDbg, there might be some interesting, but might be not. So it's going to be a basic WinDbg comments and how to use it while reverse engineering the Windows kernel. The third stream, I'm planning to talk about virtual address space, in particular the Windows virtual address space, what the user mode consists of, what the kernel mode consists of, and how to put it all together, right? And the 4th streams is not really Windows related. It's going to be about the hardware, and it's going to be about physical address space. If you're not familiar about the difference between the virtual and the physical address spaces, we're going to talk about it a lot. So what is kernel debugging? It is actually a debugging of a kernel. And what is kernel? The kernel is very core of the operating system. It is the place where the core lives, and also it's a place where the operating system drivers work. Right. So as you develop any drivers, you might want to debug them, and there comes the Windows kernel debugging. We've done a lot of debugging in the stream, but mostly, I don't remember all the streams, I'm sorry, but mostly there were user mode debugging stuff, and we saw using GDB, and even in DBG, I guess. The main difference is that when you do user mode debugging, you debug only one process. But when you do the kernel mode debugging, you debug the whole system. So the setup is like this. I'm gonna use MS Paint for beautiful pictures. Because of, what is that going to be? It's going to be a computer. Going to be a computer, an old one, running an operating system, Windows operating system, the window. So because we're going to debug an operating system, I'm sorry, I forgot to switch this in. Here it goes. I'm sorry. So I made some drawings in here. So here's the computer, and here's the operating system it runs. Since we have to debug the whole operating system, we need to get some sort of external agent to debug it. So we need another computer with another operating system, which is going to debug this one. So it's the debugger and it's the debuggee. So in terms of kernel debugging, it's the host and it's the target. Yeah. And here is the transport. It's the thing that is used to transfer data in and out to the host. So there are multiple ways to set the things up. It depends on the type of transport we actually use. And the very first transport that is used for kernel debugging was a serial port, or COM port, or UART, something like that. It has different names. But yeah, it was the first one. MSDN says it was available since Windows 2000, but actually, if you might happen to look at the leaked source code of Windows NT 4, there is a kernel debugging subsystem which tells us that there was a debugging subsystem, and certainly it was made for the serial port. But I'm not sure, I've never used that. I literally walked under the table at those times, and there was no kernel debugging for me. So I also have to mention that I decided to divide the stream into two parts. The first part, which we're going to start with, is about using the virtual machines for the debugging, because it's like, I guess it's the most common case for security researcher or malware researchers. So there are plenty of manuals on the internet of how to set up the kernel debugging using the virtual machines. So I'm just going to briefly repeat it. Here I have some virtual machines like Windows XP and Windows 8. And this Windows XP, we're going to try to set up the kernel debugging via the serial port. The serial port is added to the virtual machine configuration, and mostly the named pipes are used for serial connection to the virtual machine. So I'm going to launch it. The features of a serial port, by the way, I guess I should show you a picture of it, just in case you didn't see. Serial port. Yeah, it goes like that. It is some sort of stuff on the back of your computer. Yeah, nowadays there are serial ports built in the motherboard, and it is connected to the motherboard with this thing here, which is sold separately. But yeah, it is quite common even today, so it is available pretty much. So we're gonna start with Windows XP. Oh, here I have a question. That was a bad idea, because yeah, it appears on my screen. So different versions of Windows are set up for kernel debugger in different ways. So the first one we're going to set up is Windows XP. The boot configuration for Windows XP is set up in a file. Okay. I should have disabled that notifications, but yeah, what you gonna do? So the boot configuration is stored in boot ini file, which is located in the root of your system drive. Mostly it's C drive. So there are some configurations, some boot options, as we might see here. Yeah, there are a list of operating systems. Yeah, it's an old way of specifying the hard disk drive. I guess it's called ARC or something like that, but still, yeah. Here we have the boot option, which is the default. Here I use the Windows XP x64 edition. And in order to set up kernel debugging, we use certain keys for that. And those keys are actually these ones. So it is /debug, /debug port com2, or wherever port you use, and the baud rate, which specifies the speed of the COM port you use. I'm gonna read a question. If you have to debug the whole thing, how is it possible to dynamically instrument it in memory for something like fuzzers or reversing? You have to scan the whole address space. Okay, let me think about how it is possible to dynamically instrument in memory something for fuzzers or reversing. I am not aware of any plugins or any tools that are used for dynamical instrumentation in the kernel, although it is possible. Do you have to scan the whole address space? Well, it's a little more complicated. We will discuss it on the third stream, which is going to be in a week, but briefly, you might have to scan the whole address space, although you might not, so it depends. It really depends. Sorry if I misunderstood this one. Yeah, let's move on. So here are the settings for Windows XP. By the way, about that debug port, which is specified as COM2 right here, in order not to use improper port, you have to. Where is the device manager in Windows XP? Yes, it's right there. Device manager. Yeah. In order to pick the correct port, you have to view the communications ports that are present on your system. But yeah, the thing is that VMware uses its own sequence of serial ports. As we can see here, I've added only one serial port, but it is for some reasons, it's about some virtual printing stuff, but still, it says it's virtual port. Says it's serial port number 2, so we're going to use the communications port 2. That's why we set up the port 2 in the boot.ini file. So if something doesn't work under VMware, you just try to check if you use the correct serial port. Yeah. So about that serial transport, I showed you the picture of the socket of COM port, and here I have a cable that is used to connect this sort of ports. I hope you see it. Here it is. So it has to be a null modem cable, so it has to be, the wires inside have to be like in cross, so it's not straight. Well, I guess you understand why, in order to data flow be consistent, right? So you just use this cable. The good thing about the serial port connection is that a driver for it is pretty much simple. If you search for serial port programming on operating system developers' sites or forums, you might find that it is programmed via I/O ports. So it's basically pretty simple, and it's easy to program. That's why basically, I guess, they used it from the start at Microsoft. Yeah. Since when you debug the whole system, when you hold the system, everything stops. So no drivers work. That's why you need a separate code that will maintain the transport connectivity. So yeah, I'm gonna show you some DLLs which are located in the system folder. It has to be KD. It starts with KD, which stands for kernel debugging. So here you see there is a separate DLL, which is called KDCOM, which is kernel debugging via COM port. Yeah, and that's the separate library that's used for kernel debugging. So no operating system built-in drivers such as serial sys or something else, they're not used while kernel debugging. Because what if your driver fails? How do you debug it? And that's the reason they have to keep the transport drivers in a separate DLLs, which are small and like error prone and functional all the time. Yeah, it's the same story as the blue screen of death. Do you guys know why it's blue and why it's like has a resolution like, how's that, 640 and something, right? It's because it's the standard mode that every video card has to support. So if a video card driver inside the operating system fails, it still might use the legacy interface, this VGA interface, in order to draw you a blue screen of death. So same story here. So we're going to try and connect to this virtual machine. And for Windows kernel debugging, I use WinDbg. Yeah, you can also use the NTSD, or there is a command line tool for kernel debugging also available in Windows driver development kit or Windows SDK, which you may download from Microsoft site. Yeah, so we're gonna launch kernel debugging from, and since we use a pipe, we have to check that it's a pipe. The baud rate is the maximum available for this transport. It's like this. I do not recommend you to reduce it, because if something fails, the lower speeds won't help you. And the port, well, if we'd use a physical port, we would just leave it like that. It would become 1. Yeah, but we're using the name pipe, so I copy paste the name from the name pipe. Yeah, paste it in and click OK, and then I launch my virtual machine. So I mentioned that we're adding the debug option in a boot ini file, so I already created before the stream actually this entry, and we can just fire it up and see what happens and hope everything works. It says it's waiting to reconnect and something goes on. Yeah, and WinDbg just crashed. It's fine, guys, it's fine. It has to work like that, no worries. It happens all the time. But at least when I relaunched it, it just reconnected. Yes, it says, oh, it's a Windows debugging version, blah 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 blah, symbol path and so on, and everything's cool, and we made break key, and here is the source code, which you should not see, but yeah, whatever. So we are connected now. I know you might have many questions about how did you set up this view of WinDbg, or how do you break in. We'll leave it for tomorrow, okay? Today we're going to just like set the things up. Hope you're fine with that. So yeah, so you might see it works, and we will keep it going. Yeah, and everything's fine. The downside of a serial connection is that it works damn slowly. Just check this out. I'm going to step the code. I hope you see how I hit the key on my keyboard. Yeah, and the code is, let's switch to the disassembly view so we could see how it steps. Oh, it actually saved the key presses, and now it is stepping on its own. You see that it is really slowly. Yeah, because the speed of the serial connection is very low. Yeah, I have a question. I have to check it out. What books and sources would you recommend for learning Windows kernel stuff and writing drivers? Currently reading Windows internals. Windows internals book is actually the best choice for getting to know the Windows kernel. I personally, when I learned to write Windows drivers, I read the book of Walter Oni. Yeah, I'm gonna look it up in Google. Walter Oni, because I'm not sure how it is pronounced. And he has a great book about Windows driver model, which is an old driver model. Here it is. Amazon Smile. No, thank you. So it is like that. Programming the Microsoft Windows driver model 7th edition, and it's Walter Oni. Yeah, but this driver model is rather old, so there is another book which is by Penny Orwick and other guys, which is called Windows Driver Foundation. It's the new framework for driver development. Yeah. But to be honest with you though, the best way to get to know the Windows kernel and Windows driver development is to develop drivers, is to take the samples which are provided by the Microsoft library and try. And there are many resources about Windows kernel. For example, OSR Online. This one. Yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. And yeah, it comes with practice mostly. So yeah, I hope I've answered the question. So I was speaking about the poor performance of a serial cable. So there is a solution for the virtual machines. It is called VirtualKD. Here it is. Here's the side of it. VirtualKD. So I've tried it out and it actually works really good. The idea behind that is that we're using the virtual machine, which is physically located on the same machine where the host is, right? So there's no need to use the serial connection. By the way, the serial connection of the VMware is emulated. Yeah, and it is emulated in the same way the real serial connection would work. So it can work really fast, but it is artificially limited in order to be like the real serial port. So the virtual machine, VirtualKD solved this problem. It creates its own transport driver, and it uses VMware SDK and VMware APIs, which are based on shared memory. And it maintains an RPC, which allows you to use an alternate transport. And yeah, I'm gonna try it out right now. It consists of host side and the client side, because both of them have to be patched. So it has really cool interface. It is very simple. You just click install and it says, do you want to restart your computer now? Yes, but just a second, I need to launch the other side of VirtualKD. So it's virtual machine monitor. As you may see, it already sees the virtual machine running. So yes, I'm going to restart the computer right now. I'm going to close my current WinDbg. Yeah, debugger path is set up. Everything's fine. The Windows hangs for some reason. I don't know why, but it doesn't matter. I can reset it manually. What happens now is that VirtualKD added a new boot entry. Yeah, it says VirtualKD, everything's cool. And we pick it up. And then the virtual machine monitor launches WinDbg automatically, and it already uses the new transport. And check this out. It's the whole new level, right? Yeah, so you might want to use it. Yeah. Also, about the downsides of this method, I don't use it because it patches the stuff inside the guest, and it might be fine, but I don't like things being patched out, so I prefer the other way, which we're going to talk about later. So it's about the virtual machine. It's the main method that you use for kernel debugging. Yep, we should power off. And the setting up of kernel debugging is not different when you use the physical machine. So if you have a physical machine with a serial connection, you can do just exactly like this, like we just set up this virtual machine, and everything is going to be fine. Yeah, but starting Windows Vista, the boot configuration data is now stored not in a separate file. It is stored somewhere in the registry. I'm gonna switch to the real stand, like not a virtual machine, but the real computer, in order to show you. Oh wait, basically I have a registry editor right here. Yeah, I'm gonna show you this one. So Windows now stores the boot configuration data in this registry key. So there are some identifiers and there are elements. Yeah, and the way you can actually view it in a human readable form is a utility called BSODs, which is boot configuration data editor, right? So it has all these keys, but yeah, they're in a human readable form. So there are some boot entries actually, right? So we'll see how this thing boots. Here I have a stand, which you might ask how I connect to. I'm using an Intel vPro technology. It is active management technology, which allows me to use VNC on the remote machine from the start. Here I have a set of the operating systems, which I use for debugging. As you might see, there are half of the entries are debugger enabled. I'm gonna boot, for example, Windows 8, just to show you how the BSOD edit is storing its parameters. Yeah, and the kernel debugging is set up a little bit different on Windows Vista and the later operating systems. But for now, yeah, we might talk about the next transport. Windows XP actually introduced the new transport. So Windows 2000, it was only serial port connection. And Windows XP, I guess it's Service Pack 3, introduced a new way to debug the kernel. I mean the new transport, which is a Firewire. You might have heard of it. I actually love this technology, and it's a pity that it is almost gone now. You might have seen these connectors somewhere, and these cables are used for, connecting the devices. And I have, where is it? I have a connector to show you, which I use. I'm gonna switch this theme. Yeah, it's A to B connector. You can actually, if you don't have Firewire port in your computer, you might actually buy a Firewire controller as a PCI extension card, and you can just put it in a computer and connect two computers and have a nice kernel debugging using the Firewire. Yeah, I'm gonna answer the question right now. But first I'm gonna log in this computer. Will he talk about security POV of driver? Not definitely today, I'm sorry. So yeah, we're using the BCD edit to set up the kernel debugging. It's lagging a bit, have to restart it. Yeah, so BCD edit. Here we have a lot of boot entries. I'm sorry, I forgot to switch this again. Okay, okay. Here we have the boot entries, which you might see in the boot menu. It's different operating system listed in here, and as a separate entry, there is an entry which is for debugging. Which we may view as BCD edit DBG settings. So it's now configured for the network debugging, which we're going to talk about later. But for the sake of like not wasting time to set up serial port on a physical machine, we'll skip that part. The main difference is the syntax. So in order to turn on the kernel debugging, for the current boot entry, you just type BCD edit, set debug on, I guess. Yeah, and it says, fine, this boot entry is going to be like available for kernel debugging. And the other part of setting up the kernel debugging on Windows Vista and Upper is DBG settings. This is what we entered, but for example, if I need to like set up the serial connection, I will use the following the following string setting. I might actually show you. Here's the thing, it's MSDN, which has description of how to set up kernel debugging using different transports. So we're using the serial, and the syntax is just like this. So the DBG settings, serial, debug port, and then we specify the debug port and the baud rate, which is like 115/200. Yeah, this one. This is the maximum possible. So yeah, just like that. But now I'm going to switch to Firewire connection. Just a second. So DBG settings, then we specify the transport, which is 1394. Yeah, it's the standard for Firewire, and the channel 0. And it says operation completed successfully, so you may reboot and you may use Firewire for kernel debugging. There are a couple of notes about this Firewire thing. First of all, this channel is not meaningful on Windows Vista and Upper. It was used in Windows XP, but now it doesn't really matter. It says it is supposed to be in the values between 0 and 62. Yeah, but it doesn't really, like, it makes no difference. So we've switched to the Firewire, and then I'm going to try and connect using the Firewire. As you might guess, I have both Firewire cards on my host computer and a target computer. So I just use this one and the channel 0. Yeah, and I'm trying to break in. Yeah, the downside of current stream is that although I have a computer as a stand, it reboots slowly. But while it reboots, there are several things I have to say about setting up the kernel debugging using this Firewire thing. And now I am realizing that I've set it up incorrectly, because if you use Firewire, USB, or network card for debugging, you should tell the system which card you're going to use, because, yeah, for example, if there are many Firewire cards in your system, you have to choose which one you're going to use. Yeah, and that's the thing I really forgot to set up now. But I'm going to show you how to set this up in just a second. I hope it doesn't connect. It will be ridiculous. No, it's not going to connect. Everything's fine. Yeah. Remember the thing I said that the transport driver is a separate DLL, right? So there is not much functions of the current operating system used in it. So you have to set the things up manually for most of the things in this transport. Yeah. So, come on, load it up. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna show right here. Oh no, it's loading. Everything's fine. Lagging a bit. I have to restart it. Sorry about that. Yeah. So we have a device manager again. And here we have yeah, host controllers of 1394, which is exactly Firewire. So what we're gonna have to look up is its address, its PCI address of it. So it's bus 6, device 0, function 0, which is certainly points out that it is an external card. Yeah, because internal devices are usually reside on bus 0. So what I have forgotten to specify in DBG settings, it is bus params. Bus params 600. Oh, I forgot the, yeah, like that. Seems to be fine. So the syntax is set bus params 600, which is this address. It tells our transport driver to use this PCI address and to try to initialize the device from this PCI address. So let's try this out and see if it works actually. Skipping ahead, I have to say that Firewire is really nice transport. It works on 100 megabits per second, which is pretty fast. Yeah, you know, the faster it works, the happier I am, actually. Yeah, it's going to restart. It's take a while. And also, I realized that I skipped the part from malware researching to debugging enthusiasts, because, yeah, Firewire transport is not available commonly, is not available on virtual machines. So actually there are two options for debugging virtual machines. It's serial port via the pipes, the named pipes, and if you want to debug Windows 8 and upper, you might also use a network card, which is like for the dessert. Yep. Let's see how it works. It works certainly slowly. Yeah. And yes, it is connected. Cool. Everything works fine. I want you to check this out. I want you to check the speed out. Yeah. You know, it is so fast that sometimes the WinDbg just can't redraw the stuff and it starts blinking. How cool is that? Yeah, it's pretty much cool. It's way more cooler than using the serial port. Yeah. And I guess that was it about the Firewire transport. I don't remember any pitfalls about it. It's pretty much straightforward. Yeah. So I'm gonna move on to the next transport, which was implemented in Windows Vista, I guess. Yeah, it was Windows Vista. It is USB 2, USB the second, or whatever you like. So it's the transport that is suitable for debugging notebooks, for example, right? Because Firewire ports are pretty much rare for now in the notebooks. I've never seen serial ports in the notebooks also, so there is an extension in a host controller interface for USB, which is called Extended Host Controller Interface. There is an extension that adds a debug capability through this host controller. It allows to use your host controller in a separate way than the operating system uses. So it has a separate set of programmed registers which allow you to capture one port and use it for debugging purposes. And the main state of the host controller will not affect this port, right? So I read about this. Here comes the story. I read that, yeah, there is debugging available for using the USB, and I came to the radio shop and said, give me the USB cable. Yeah, and said, yeah, sure, fine. And I bought this one. I'm gonna show you. Just straight cable with like 2 connectors. And when I connected them to the target and to the host, nothing worked. Yeah, and when I realized what I was doing wrong, I felt really stupid because the architecture, here comes the drawings. The architecture of USB is we have a host and we have a device. So a device can't do anything unless this host asks it to. Yeah, host is like always questioning the device. Do you have any data? Do you want me to read anything? Oh yeah, I want to write anything to you. But device cannot initiate any USB transaction. And imagine that I've plugged in 2 hosts, because on the computer it's a host controller. So I plugged this cable straight forward using 2 hosts, and what happens? Nothing. Of course, they can't talk to each other. They think that there is a device, but there isn't. So no communication will work for that using USB 2. USB 3 is a whole different story, but for this one, it doesn't work. So I googled up the USB debugging cable, and I came up with this thing. Yeah. Oh, I guess it's out of focus, but it says USB to 0 debug cable, Edge's Technologies. Yeah, there were a lot of this back in 2010 and something like that. Yeah, but now Edge's technology doesn't exist anymore. It's a pity. I've tried to look for these ones on eBay, on AliExpress, on wherever. It is out of stock, and there's no way to find them, unfortunately. But still, they did exist. What it is, it's just a device. It has 2 USB-B ports on it, but it basically what it does, it connects 2 computers, yeah, with regular USB cords, and it acts as a device for both of the computers. This is how the communication works. for two host controllers, it just sees a device in the middle, and this device is pretty much stupid. It just like sends and receives the data that he like receives from the other side. Yeah, so that's the story about the debugging cable. It has to be this specific one. And I'm gonna read a question in just a second. I'm gonna show you how to set the thing up if you're lucky to have it. So how about over the network? Anybody knows if kernel debugging over the network is as fast? It is pretty damn fast. It's the best way to debug the kernel. But we'll get to that a little later. Yeah, and by the way, if you're bored or tired, I can speed the things up actually. So there's one thing I gotta tell you about setting the kernel debugging using the USB. So first of all, your computer has to have extended host controller interface device. So if you have only USB 3, which is extended host controller, it doesn't work. It has to be like USB 2 host controller. And it says, I use this utility called USB View. It is from Windows SDK. It actually is located in the same folder as WinDbg. Yeah, and it's used for testing the USB. So when we see the host controller, it says debug port number. If the point is, not every host controller implements the debug feature. It's an optional feature, so it just might not be there. But if it's there, you can see it as a debug port number. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to switch this thing again. What's going on today? Yeah, so what I was talking is I use the device, USB device viewer, and here's the USB 2 controller, which is extended host controller, and it says it has debug port number 2. Yeah, and as opposed, there is a USB 3 host controller, which is extended host controller. It also has a debugging feature, but it works in a completely different way, so we'll just leave it like for a while. So I was saying, it says the debug port number. It is usually the first one or the second one, but there's a catch actually. You might think that here's the root hop, here's the port 1, here's the port 2. So it has to be the debug port. And the USB view says this debug port, this port is the debug port, but it lies. Yeah, but it lies not on purpose. It's just the design of the host controller changed several times. So now we should count the port starting from root USB hub. So it's gonna be port 2. How do you physically locate it? You just brute force your ports. It happens that port may not be like output on your notebook or on your computer. Yeah, because there are a lot of ports, internal ports, but they might have no physical connectors. So I just gonna brute force it. I plug the other side into the port, and it says, oh, you got a USB debug connection device, but it's actually in a like different port. So I switch to a different port, and it's, yep, it's there. So it's ready to be used. And I got a question. Where is it? Where are you, my friend? What is the best way to debug Windows for Mac hosts? The Mac hosts? You mean the Mac computers like Mac Mini, MacBooks, or something? Yeah, if I get it right, if I understood right, yeah, there are some troubles in kernel debugging Mac devices because they actually, I've seen only a few devices, which is Mac Mini late 2014, which have USB debugging feature in their controllers. Yeah, and it happens a lot of times that debug connectors are not there, are not present physically. So yeah, you might have a tough time. But yeah, when we get to the kernel debugging using the network, yeah, we will see if it's possible actually for Macs. Yeah, so I'm gonna try to set the things up using the USB to debug cable. So I'm gonna look up one. So BCD edit, zoom it in. DBG settings, USB. Gotta look up the string. It has to be yeah, the only parameter here is the target name. It is used for like distinguishing the debug targets when you have multiple hosts, USB debug, connected to your host computer. Yeah, so everything went fine, and the most important part is that we have to specify this one, the bus params again, because host controller is located in a different PCI location, right? So we have to use this one. So BCD edit, please come on, no, don't you worry. Set bus params, this one, completed successfully. Reboot again and see what happens. I'm gonna close WinDbg and kernel debug, USB, target name, USB debug. You might notice that there is no difference in WinDbg when you use like USB 2 or USB 3. It's just a common option. Fail to copy USB into device driver. Run elevated. Yeah, here's a catch again. In order to work, WinDbg has to install the driver. So I'm gonna start the WinDbg as an administrator for it to be able to set up the kernel driver for USB debugging. USB debug. Yeah, and everything went fine. It installed the driver automatically. Yeah. Actually, the same you have to do with the Firewire connection. The first time you run it, you have to run it as an administrator for it to set up the driver. So I'm going to see what happens here. BIOS loads. Yeah. The downside of using the active management technology is that it boots a little slower. But yeah, this is life, you know. Yeah, it is connected. I'm lucky today. I'm really lucky today because everything connects from the first time. Yeah, and here's the downside of this transport. It seems to be faster than serial connection, but it's certainly slower than Firewire connection, for example. And there's a reason for that. The maximum transfer size for USB in the case of debug cable is 8 bytes. So it works on a rate the same as USB 2, but USB 2 has maximum transfer size of 512, I guess. Yeah, 512. That's actually that magical 480 megabits per second. But here we have only 8, so you may like count what the real throughput of this connection. So it's pretty much slow. Yeah, so the engineers designed the new standard, USB 3. I'm gonna plug it off shortly. And they realized that, yeah, guys, we need like a more comfortable way to debug using the USB. Actually, USB debug feature, which is extended host controller specific, is nowadays pretty common. Yeah, if you buy a Skylake and upper processor with an appropriate chipset, it must support the kernel debugging using the USB 3 connection. Yeah, I have to show you the media which is used for connecting USB 3. It's just a cord. You see, there is no device in the middle because the new architecture of USB 3 allows a host controller to act as a device. There is no longer a need for a device in the middle. You just can connect it with a debug cable, but it's a special debug cable. I'm gonna show you in a second. If you Google it, USB debug cable, the first link goes to this store. This is where I bought this thing, right? It says super speed AA debugging cable, and watch out, they sell like really long cables, but USB specification says that it best works on the length under 3 meters, but these ones are like longer than 3 meters, and they actually don't work well. And once the debug packet is dropped, WinDbg is not good enough to like restore the connection. So you might avoid buying these ones. Yeah, they're long, but they don't work well, so forget about them. So what's so special about why it's like debugging cable? Well, actually, you can do one on your own. USB 3 connector. I'm gonna show you how to do it right now. Well, images. So yeah, here it is. You see? So there are additional connections for USB 3, and those are USB 2 pins. In order to make this cord, which you might buy anywhere, you have to destroy these pins. Just like cut them off, and you got a nice debugging USB 3 debugging cable. This is how it works. And yeah, so where is it? Okay, here it is. The debugging feature also can be observed using the USB device viewer. Here on this stand, I don't have an enabled extended host controller, and if I enable it, it would say that it doesn't support debug port feature. So I have an external card, and it says debug port number 0. Actually, you can connect, most of the time you can connect to the any super speed ports. It has to be super speed ports, and those are debug capable, because you see those ports are not debug capable, and the super speeds are debug capable. So here's the thing about if you want to use an external card for USB 3 debugging, there's also a catch. Sorry, I don't know any foreign like shops, so I'm gonna use a Russian one. So USB 3 controller. So you might find on the market a lot of USB 3 controllers, right? But how do you no, it's not that. How do you distinguish which controllers support USB debugging and which are not? I'll tell you in just a second. So they might be out of stock right now. That would be like hilarious. So sorry, but I can't find them right now. So USB controller. They are really out of stock right now. Okay, do it in a different way. I remember the name, for example, High Point USB controller. Yeah, Rocket U. For example, here you have a controller. Suppose you're on the market. You have to Google this particular model, yeah, and see the specification of it. And it says, what does it say? It should say which chip it uses. And under remote aware, I don't see any chips here. Overview. It has to say either what chip it uses or what standard it supports, because there were several standards for extensible host controller interface, and the first one didn't actually include the debugging feature of USB. So another way, STLAB USB controller. For example, this one. Yeah, maybe this one. Oh, it's not USB point 2. Sorry for the... Oh, here it goes. So you have found a controller in the shop, right? So you have to look up. Oh, it says it uses this chip. The second step is we Google this chip. It says it's RINSS chip, and we go to the site and see the description of it. And it says it complies to the specifications 1.0, and it doesn't like, it's not necessarily support, but it's likely to support the USB debugging feature, because there is another standard which is like that, 099. It doesn't support a USB debugging feature for sure. So if you Google the chip that supports this version of standard, it doesn't support. So yeah, this is how you choose your controller. But then, for the sake of saving time, I guess I'm gonna skip setting this up, because it is set up just exactly as USB 2, right? The difference is it works really fast compared to the USB 2. Yeah, because it uses super speed. So if you want like fast connection, you might use this one. So yeah. And the last stop for today is using the network. And here I can go back actually to the virtual machine. You can use network debugging since Windows 8. It was first introduced in Windows 8. But there are also some catches, you know. Not all network cards are supported for kernel debugging. You can actually Google them up on MSDN. MSDN supported, and I see kernel. Here it is. So you have to look up your vendor ID and device ID. It's like, this is Intel Corporation, and this is the list of the network cards that are supported for kernel debugging. But the downside of this list is that it is not maintained actually. Oh, this is something new. I swear it was not there just like a week ago. Oh, maybe not a week ago, but it's the first time I see it. So they do, yeah, they do support this list. So yeah, no problem. I thought I was going to advise you to reverse engineer the corresponding DLLs, which contain the full list of device IDs that are supported for kernel debugging, but I guess there is no longer need for that, and that's a good news, because you can look up your network card device ID right here. Yeah, and each update of Windows 10 adds more network cards to be used for Windows debugging. Yeah, and usually the internal network card you use in your computer, it is usually supported for Windows kernel debugging, for the latest version at least. Yeah, and the good news about this that VMware emulates the Intel E1000 driver compatible network card. It means that you can use VMware built-in network card for kernel debugging. So yeah, it is already preset in my case, so I'm gonna just fire it up. Here you just specify the port number that is going to be used for kernel debugging, and the key is needed because the traffic is encrypted for kernel debugging. So yeah, I'm just firing up the virtual machine and see how it goes. It's booting. And then in just a while I will show you how to set this up. Yeah, and it is already connected. And as you might guess, does it work? Does it work? It is certainly connected, but I cannot break in yet. It must be booting or something. Yeah, something's going on. Yeah, okay, let's switch to the physical stand then. I'm going to set the debugging in here. So the keywords, yeah, something broke down. It is out of sync. Yeah, fine, whatever. We'll set this thing in here. So BSOD edit. I forgot it again. Using a network cable. So DBG settings. Yeah, DBG settings. Net. We're going to use network. Host IP. It's the IP of the host. In my case, it's gonna be this one, I guess, if I remember it right. And the port is this one. Yeah, and it automatically assigns you a key of encryption. And it's not really convenient to memorize it, right? Or it's not convenient to keep it somewhere, so I just do it like that. You have a chance to like alter the key using I'm sorry. So I just yeah have to look it up again. The key is modified. Settings, key. Does it work like that? Maybe like this. Oh, I guess I've missed. Yeah. No. That's confusing. Yeah. I'm gonna have to look it up. Creating your own key. So MSDN says that I am supposed to add it while setting the host IP and the port IP. Okay, let's do it like that. So we have to retype this comment. And key. Yeah, seems to be working. Let's try this up. Yeah, thank you for the correction. I just totally forgot. I set up the kernel debugging once and then I use it like for months. That's the reason I forgot it now. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. And the last thing is we have to alter the bus params, right? And for that, we're gonna have to need the device manager again. And the network adapters and Ethernet connection, I guess this one. So it's 0.25.0. The bus params 0.50. Yeah, let's try this thing out. First, I'm gonna shut down the lagging virtual machine because I've set up the same port. and I'm gonna have to kill the WinDbg die and restart the Yeah, it's the fastest and the most convenient way to do the kernel debugging. Yeah, but it is supported since Windows 8. But I know you guys often have to debug Windows 7 or even worse, Windows XP, and there is no like network debugging in there. Yeah, but it is super convenient for the latest versions of Windows 10. Really, there are like a lot of useful extensions in WinDbg that rely on the speed of the connection. So yeah. And when WinDbg died, it happens to him because the debugging engine of it is synchronous. Yeah, so I type in the port and the key. And we just wait a little bit. Yeah, and I got a question. Since we're now going through debugging through the network using in virtual machine, does it also using virtual, does it also virtual the network device that are actually the Ethernet wire? I'm gonna have to like get into it. Do debugging through network using it in virtual machine, does it also how do I understand that virtual device? You're actually using the yeah, I guess I understand it. No, we use the virtual network that is built in the virtual machine. So it's more about virtual networking. So there's no need like to pass through the physical adapter to it or like to do the physical connection with the PatchGuard or something, right? So yeah, it is not needed. I'm gonna speed the things up and turn the computer off and on again. Yeah, the best way to get it working. Okay. So, as for the debugging transports, I guess that was it about the pitfalls. Yeah, the main troubles are coming to place when you decide to debug using the USB 3 on like computers that are 3 or like 4 years old, because yeah, it is connected, it is using the network now. We're going to break it in just a while because it's the place where my firmware is lagging a bit. Yeah, it's running, and we'll check out the speed. Yeah, it resembles me the speed of the Firewire connection, and is actually also 100 megabit. But if your card supports like gigabit networking, it will also work on a gigabit speed. Yeah, it's quite useful if you need to do like, for example, a kernel crash dump and you have to download it on your host machine. Yeah, the faster the transfer is, yeah, the more efficient it becomes. Yeah. So it was the last transport for the day, at least. No, not for today. It was just the last transport. Yeah. So if there are any more questions, I'm ready to answer them right now. Yeah, I'm logging in. For the sake of experiment, I might try to connect the virtual machine again, because I'm not really sure why it crashed like last time. Yeah. I'm going to shut down the stand. So the question, can you emulate USB driver that goes through the network card on Windows 7? I mean, so you can use that for emulated USB thingy for network debugging. Okay, here's the thing about emulating stuff. If we're talking about the virtual machine, if there is an option for passing through the physical device into this virtual machine, it might work. It might, because most of the times the hypervisors use para-virtualizations, which is half a physical device and half of an emulation. Yeah, but I haven't tried to use it for VMware. At least VMware doesn't allow to pass you through, for example, Firewire controller. Yeah, if we're talking about the physical machine, I guess I understand what you're talking about. If, for example, here's a cable, which is one side a USB and the other side is serial, right? The thing is that this actually is not a serial device, it's a USB device. Yeah. So if there is like a compound device, you have to find what the base device of it is and consider if the base device works. Because, for example, if you use USB 2 debugging, no hubs are allowed in between the target computer and this device. Yeah, because the transport driver on the target side is pretty much straightforward. It's super simple and it supports only physical devices without any emulation in this sort of stuff. So, for example, if you have a USB network card, it is, in the first place, it's not a network card, it's a USB device. And since it's not a USB debugging device, right, it is not going to be supported. Yeah. If the debugger Brehm stops all of the operating system, how does the debugging system itself runs? It doesn't just run, it just freezes. Yeah, because remember the time when you debug an actual user mode program, when you break in, it pauses, it freezes, it doesn't do anything. So since we're debugging the whole system, everything just stops and waits for your response. That's the way it works, and that's actually the reason why you have to have two computers, one target and one host. Because if you would have debugged the OS from itself, the point when you break in, it just stops working and it has no response. Because in order to respond to you, there must be like processes, user mode processes running, drivers running, and they're just halted. They like cannot respond to you. So yeah. Actually, there is a possible way to do the live kernel debugging, but it's not debugging, because it allows you to read and write kernel memory, for example, but it doesn't allow you to state the change of the debuggy. You can't stop the live system. Yeah, it's clear why. What topics will you cover in next 3 streams? Tomorrow I'm gonna cover the basic usage of WinDbg. Yeah, it's pretty much basic stream. Yeah, and the other two that are going to be in a week. So once again, one stream is going to be about the virtual address space in Windows, both user mode space, what's inside it, and the kernel mode space, what's inside it. And the fourth stream is actually about the physical side of the computer. It is about physical address space. Yeah, what devices live there, like what regions of memory are there, and what are they supposed to do, and what they serve for, and this sort of stuff. So I guess it's a requirement to have a powerful PC. No, absolutely not. It doesn't require a powerful PC. Actually, I use to debug a lot of notebooks or even netbooks which are low power and like super slow, and no, it doesn't really matter how fast your computer is. So are you having a dedicated virtualization server for this stuff? No, I actually don't have. I ran a VMware workstation for the demonstration, and the things I showed on in this window is actually a physical computer, which is right here under my table, which I manage through the technology that is called Intel Active Management Technology. It allows you to run a VNC inside its firmware. Yeah, that's the way I see the BIOS and loading screens and all sorts of stuff. Yeah, it's pretty much convenient way to use like a physical PC. Especially, it is very cool for remote using the PC. So, like soft ice, I guess this question is a little bit out of context. Like soft ice, yeah, soft ice was using its own driver for the hardware, specifically for the video card, in order to have an output for you on your monitor. And it also used, as far as I remember, it also used a custom USB driver in order to communicate to the user with the keyboard. So it had a feedback. Actually, it had separate drivers for the keyboard and for the monitor. That's actually the main reason why it died, because there is no standard for programming the video cards. Yeah, it has to be the different driver all the time, and the specifications for the video cards are closed most of the time. Yeah, and that's the reason why they didn't support the output on the screen. But what's the purpose of a debugger that can't output the data on the screen, right? So that was really sad. Is Linux kernel mode debugging different? I mean, why is handled since it's modular? To be honest with you, I've never done a Linux kernel debugging, so I'm sorry, I don't know. I heard that it is pretty much like using the GDB and no different. Yeah, but I'm sorry. So how is debugging system resumed, especially through net? Okay, I guess it's the stuff I forgot to mention, or I decided not to mention, but yeah. So we have two computers, right? Where's my MS Paint? So again, we have computer 1, which is host, and we have computer 2, which is target. So we're going to debug this one. Yeah, and they are connected via some media or some transport. For example, you say it is a network. So there is a special module inside this operating system kernel, which is called KD, which surprisingly stands for kernel debugging, right? So it interacts with the driver of this transport, and it does really basic stuff. And the host has a special protocol which is used for communicating with this KD module. For example, it sends a packet which says, retrieve the context, retrieve me your registers, and then the kernel debugging module fulfills this request and sends it back. So basically, how do you stop? How do you break in? The kernel debugging module actually polls this transport and sees if there are any new packets, any new requests. And if it says that host said, all right, break in now, it just breaks in and everything freezes. And it enters the loop when he serves the requests from the server. And that's exactly the way how it resumes. The host says, go, just run, and it sends a packet which says, go. And the kernel debugger says like, okay, I'm going on. Yeah, that's basically how it works. It has a special protocol, right? So Did you patch your firmware? I heard AMT is vulnerable. Yeah, you heard it right, but I didn't patch it because, yeah, I don't care. Because it's a stand, it has nothing valuable in it. Yeah, you've seen there are like a bunch of different Windows versions, and it's used mainly for debugging, testing, reverse engineering and stuff. It's sort of virtual machine, but it's physical. Yeah, right. So, yeah. Might be stupid, but do people still write drivers nowadays? Unfortunately, yes, they do. Yeah, and that's the common case of kernel debugging. The other common case of kernel debugging is actually when something fails and when you see the blue screen of death. And there, the kernel dump automatically is saved on the disk. And that's like all the different story, but yeah, you load this crash dump in WinDbg and you have like this snapshot of memory and you like research what really happened, why did it crash. Yeah. Can you share your WinDbg workspace theme too? Looked kinda neat. Yes, I can do that tomorrow. Yeah, otherwise I'm not sure what I'm going to talk about. So yeah, I'll show you how to set the thing up. Although it's difficult to sort of share it. I heard there is an option in the latest WinDbg, but yeah, I'm not sure, I have to check it. What I'm talking about is that this so-called workspace. Oh yes, it has an option to save a workspace to file. Yeah, back like a couple years ago, there were no this option, and the workspaces were saved directly to the registry. So you have to look it up in the registry, save it to the registry file, and to like import on the other machine. Yeah, sort of like that. So yeah, is it true that blue screen of death on Windows usually indicates hardware failure nowadays? No, it's not. Actually, no, it's not. Well, if you see a blue screen of death, for example, somewhere on the street, like on an advertising sheet, yeah, probably. I'm just looking at them and I look for the error code, and if it says something like kernel stack in page error M, yeah, it's the hard drive failure. But still, there are a lot of buggy drivers. I mean it, buggy. And the buggy kernel modules lead to system crashes. So it's not necessarily related to the hardware failure. Yeah, like from my experience, I've seen far less hardware failures in the crash dumps compared to the bugs in drivers, and especially security software. Oh, not calling which one. Yeah. So what do you think of WinDbg as an attack surface when we're debugging malware on a VM? So you got the malware running in the virtual machine. It's the different machine from the machine that you're debugging actually. So the host where the WinDbg is a different machine. Well, actually, if the malware has an access to the kernel mode, if it has an execution at ring 0, it may apply the patches. It may detect the kernel debugging, first of all, and it actually might like patch some things out in the debugging protocol. Actually, you may fuzz it, and I'm pretty much sure that you can lead WinDbg to crash, because yeah, so I guess it's possible via attacking the debug protocol actually. Yeah, right. So I'm gonna look at the YouTube chat. Yeah. Can you share? Yeah, it's mostly the same questions. So, are we waiting for the other questions or something? Hello, somebody, tell me. Yeah, I guess then that's about it. Just in case there will be a stream tomorrow, so if you have any questions, you might save them for tomorrow and I'll answer them. Right. So thank you for watching. Thank Invite for inviting me. It's been an honor. Yeah. Sorry for lags, stupid things, and mistakes. Yeah. Thanks. I'm not sure if I'm off.
Okay, so I'm going to jump in. Honorary bot, thank you, that was awesome. I actually learned quite a lot, in all honesty. For example, I learned that somebody actually did set up USB debugging. I always thought that's close to impossible, but it seems it's actually not. So that's awesome to hear. And in all honesty, I've been using mostly Firewire debugging because you recommended it to me some years ago. And I bought, like express cards for my laptop so I can debug it, and that worked really well. On my Polish streams, I also did one about, well, when I showed it, I guess, kinda. So yeah, so that's about it for today, and tomorrow Honorary Bot will do the second part, and the next parts are going to be both Wednesday next week and Thursday next week at the same time. So thank you very much for coming, and yeah, see you tomorrow, see you next week, and if you would like to solve the mission, then it will appear in a couple of seconds. So thank you for being here, happy hacking, and have a great evening. Bye bye!